Reading with Joan.
Hi kids, we are back on another edition of Reading with Joan. I hope you have fun as you join us as we read the various books we have on the show.
Reading with Joan, the place for all the fun. Creative kids.
Welcome to Reading with Joan. Today we're reading Black and British. We're starting from where Big J stopped. So let's start. Over 2 days, 120 police officers stopped and searched 943 people, arresting 108 on various charges. Tensions between the police and the Black community were already high, and Swamp 81 led to a complete breakdown of trust and explosion of anger and frustration. Years of resentment against the Special Patrol Group, an illegal system that routinely believed racist police officers and disbelieved members of the Black community, had finally boiled over. The riots of 1981 spread beyond London to other cities and the areas of them in which young Black people, children of the original Windrush generation, were marginalized and persecuted by the police. Riots broke out in Handsworth in Birmingham, Moss Side in Manchester, and Toxteth in Liverpool. In Liverpool, young Black people rioted against a police force that for decades had been called hostile towards. The Liverpool Police Task Force had a particularly bad reputation among Black Liverpoolians and had also made use of the sus law. The Liverpool Chief Constable Kenneth Oxford believed that the cause of the riots was not police harassment or the effects of high employment, but the problem of half-caste in Liverpool. In Bristol, not far from the flickering flames of the riot in St Paul's district of the city, a statue of Edward Colston, the slave trader, a member of the Royal African Company in the 17th century, looked on. The riot of the 1980s have been called upsprings, and they were a response to years of persecution and prejudice. They were destructive and in some ways damaging, but they were understandable. A generation who had been targeted and harassed by the police, their entire lives had simply had enough. In the years that followed, survey after survey, the decline in racist attitudes in Britain as a younger generation emerged and not experienced the racism of the post-war period, nor had been brought up to view the world through the memory of the empire. Yet, the Black people still suffered higher rates of unemployment, achieved lower results at school, and were largely locked out of professional jobs in law, medicine, politics, and the media. Hostility from the police also remains. In 1993, during this period in which life got better in many ways for Black Britons, a Black teenager called Stephen Lawrence was murdered by a gang of 5 white men. Although his murderers were quickly identified and arrested, the police failed to prosecute them, and Lawrence's family had to launch a private prosecution. The failures of the police to properly investigate the murder of Lawrence and prosecute its killers led to public inquiry. The report that came from that inquiry was known as the Black Persons Report. What it showed was that the intaxation of the police in seeking to prosecute the murderers of Stephen Lawrence was a symptom of a culture of institutional racism within the Metropolitan Police. History of Black people after 1945 is just not about immigration control, racism, and the police. Although British racism, the ideas created by the slave owners of the 18th century and the empire builders of the 19th century continue to impact on the lives of the Black people. A story of Black British people. And was also one of culture, art, sports, integration, and advancement. In the decades after 1980, the Black community grew in size and became increasingly African. At the turn of the century, West Indians still made up the majority of the UK's Black population. But as the 2011 census revealed, between 2001 and 2011, the British African population doubled due to both migration and natural increase. For the first time, probably, since the age of the Atlantic slave trade, the majority of Black Britons or their parents had come to this country directly from Africa, rather than somewhere in the Americas. These newer migrants came mainly from West Africa. Many were Nigerians or Kenyan. Some came entirely to study but ended up staying. Others migrated to join family and set up homes or to take up programs. Like the West Indian nurses who came in the 1950s and 1960s, many of these migrants came to work in the National Health Service. Some of those who arrived from Zimbabwe and Sudan came as refugees. While the British African population expanded, longer established West Indian populated integrated more successful than perhaps any more immigrant group of modern times. West Indians have drawn millions of white British people and people of other heritage into their family networks through intermarriage and friendship. At the same time, they and African migrants have also drawn the whole nation toward their cultures and music. Through sports, music, cinema, fashion, and television, Black Britons became the standard bearers of a new culture and national identity. The Notting Hill Carnival, invented by the Trinidadian journalist Claudia Jones in response to the Notting Hill riots of 1958, has become the biggest street festival in Europe and an established part of the calendar for Londoners. Many of the nation's sporting teams have become increasingly diverse and look increasingly like the home nations they represent. Another critical feature of Black British life in the last years of the 20th century was a determination within the community to reclaim their lost history. Because of the attitude of men like Enoch Powell, he could not bring himself to see Black British as British. History was needed to demonstrate that Black British children born of immigrant parents were part of a longer story that stretched back to the Afro-Romans, whose remains are only now being properly identified. In the 1980s, the concept of Black History Month was brought to Britain, an idea that had been pioneered in the United States back in the 1920s as Negro History Week. Black history became critical to a whole community, while at the same time being highly personal to those who discovered it. At first, Black History Month was dominated by African American history, but year by year has become more properly focused on the Black British past. What I learned was about the Black history and how it expanded and how it changed because of what the Black people did. The Black people, they really changed the whole of Britain. They changed how Britain thought about Africa, and they really grew. And everything changed because of the African people. Yeah. Anyway, thank you for joining us on Reading with Joan. Bye!
Hi kids, welcome to another episode of Reading with Joan. I hope you had a good lesson for Compere last week. We are continuing our book, Tales from the Caribbean. And this week, we're reading another lesson for Compere Lapel. This time, Compere Lapel looks for wisdom. He looks for it. Last time, he was good sense. Maybe he's gonna get wisdom time. This story is based on a fox tale from St. Lucia and the Commonwealth of Dominican. One day, Compere Lapel went to see God and said, "You are the wisest of them all. If only I could be wise like you." "No one will be wise like me," said God. "That's not just fair," said Compere Lapel. "Keeping all the wisdom to yourself is just greedy." Can you say greedy? Well, God thought about what Compere Lapel said. God likes liked to be fair, and he certainly wasn't greedy. Very well, God said. If you pass some tests, I will give you some wisdom. Coppola Pearl was intrigued. What was this test, he asked? There are 3 possible tasks, said God. If you can do the 3 tasks, I will give you wisdom. First, bring me the scale of the greatest, biggest sea fish. Second, bring me a milk from a wild cow. Third, bring me 2 teeth from the middle of a living crocodile. Oh. Okay, I stopped laughing. Now, Corporal Lapel wasn't one to be beaten, and although the task setting seemed to be impossible, he was ready to take up the challenge. Very well, said Corporal Lapel. I will bring you the greatest, biggest sea fish. I would bring you milk from the wild cow, and I'll bring you 2 teeth from the middle of a living crocodile. Corporal Lapel had no idea how he was going to get these things and bring to God. He went home to think of a plan. Corporal Pell liked to play his drum when he had a problem. Tapping the rhythm on his drum always helped him to relax. His children liked to listen to him play too, as they liked to dance. So as Corporal Pell played his drum, the children danced. Suddenly, an idea came to him. Corporal Pell ran out of his house, still carrying his drum, and ran all the way to the edge of the sea. Once there, he began to play his drum, making rhythms that called all the fish in the sea to come out, and then at first little fish appeared, popping his head out of the water one by one, then came out of the water and danced around Kopelapel, but he was far from satisfied. The music is for the great big fish, said Kopelapel. Surely there are big fishes than you in the sea. Say louder, said the little fish. The bigger fish are lower down in the sea, so they cannot hear you. So Kopelapel played his drum even louder and more rhythmically than before. Larger fish popped up their head out of the water, and then they too came out of the water and danced around him. But still, Kopelapel wasn't satisfied. This music is for the big, great sea fish, said Kopelapel. Surely there are bigger fish than you in the sea. Where is the biggest fish of all? Play louder, said the bigger fish. The big, great fish is lower down the sea, so he can't hear you. So Kopelapel played his drum even louder and more rhythmically than before. At last, the biggest, greatest fish of all popped his head out of the water. Kopelapel was overwhelmed with the big, great sight. The greatest, biggest fish of all did not dance and would not come out of the water. He simply won. Kopelapel called out the greatest, biggest fish of all. Great one, come and play the drum while I dance. All the biggest, great fish of all come out of the water and played Kopelapel's drum while he danced. After a while, Kopelapel stopped dancing and said, now I will play the drums while you dance. And so Kopelapel played the drum while the greatest, biggest fish of all danced. Then Kopelapel said, I'm tired. I will lay down and take a rest while you watch over me. And Kopelapel lay down and rested, and the greatest, biggest fish of all watched him. After a while, Kopelapel said, now you rest and lie down. I'll watch over you. And the greatest, biggest fish of all lay down. As soon as he did so, Kopelapel knocked unconscious the greatest, biggest fish of all and removed his scale. Kopelapel took the scale and presented them to God. Fine, said God. You have 2 more tasks. Now go into the woods and bring me some milk from the wild cow. Kopelapel had no idea how he was going to get milk from the wild cow, but he went home and picked a small grunt that carried the milk and set off into the wood. He wandered around trying to think of a way to get the milk until he stumbled on a large softwood tree and suddenly had an idea. Kopelapel climbed to the top of the tree, and once on top, he began to call on the wild cow. Wild cow, wild cow, come and get me if you can. Wild cow? Everyone in the forest knew the wild cow was not to be messed with. Who is calling me in such a disrespectful way? Called the wild cow. It's me, Kopelapel. You weak, pathetic wild cow. The wild cow followed the sound of Kopelapel's voice and charged into the center of the forest. She looked at Kopelapel, but couldn't see him anywhere. Where are you? I can't see you, she said. I am here in the tree, said Lapin. You had better come down here so I can mash you up, said the wild. Mash me up? Laughed Lapin. I heard that you have lost all the strength and you can't even hurt the tiny little fly. That's a lie, said the wild cow. I am the strongest beast in the forest. You are so weak, said Lapin, from the great height in the tree. You couldn't even knock this tree down. Oh, yes, I can, said the wild cow. Let me see you do it then, grunted Lapin. The wild cow couldn't wait to show Lapin how he could knock down the tree. She put her head down and charged on first. But because the back of the tree was stuck, her horn went deep into the trunk and stuck fast. Oh no. I'm stuck, she said. My horn is stuck in the tree. Are you sure? Said Lapin. Yes, I'm certain, said the wild cow, trying to move his head. Well, if you're sure, then I'll come down, said Lapin. When Lapin came down from the top of the tree, he took the milk from the wild cow. And when his small grunt was filled of milk, he presented it to God. Fine, said God. You now have one task to complete, but this task is truly impossible. There is no way you can bring me 2 teeth from the mouth of a living crocodile. Lapin had no idea how he was going to complete the third and final task, but he knew if he did, then God would give him wisdom. He needed to find a way to get the 2 teeth of a living crocodile. He went home to think, and while he was bathing, Lapin had a brilliant idea. He asked his wife to bring him all the soap in the house, and then when she had done this, he marched over to the trail where he knew crocodile used in the hill that led to the river. Lapin spread soap on the trail from crocodile's house on the top of the hill all the way to the bottom of the hill. And at the bottom of the hill, he placed a large rock. Then he called out, Crocodile, crocodile, come quickly. At the bottom of the trail, there is a dead rabbit to eat. And then he lay down near the rock and pretended to be dead. Just as he had expected, Crocodile came out of his house and saw Lapin lying down at the bottom of it. He immediately started down the hill to eat Lapin. But as he did so, he began to sleep on the soap. He slipped faster and faster until he crashed into the large rock. When his big jaw hit the rock, 2 teeth had knocked out, and Lapin jumped up and caught the teeth. He brought them to God, and God was amazed. You brought me the scale from the biggest, greatest sea fish, milk from the wild cow, and 2 teeth from the mouth of a living crocodile, said God. That's right, said Lapin. I brought you the 3 impossible things you asked for, and you promised to give me wisdom in return. God pondered for what Lapin said. It requires great wisdom for you to get these 3 impossible things, said God. You already have wisdom. Lapin thought about what God had said. It was true. While he had been looking for wisdom, he hadn't realized that he had used wisdom to complete the 3 impossible tasks and had what he was looking for all alone. Kids, that's a very great lesson. Do you know sometimes what we are looking for from others, what we are looking for from our friends, what we are looking for from our mom and dad, we have it all alone. Some of us think we are not smart enough. Some of us think we are not beautiful enough. Some of us think that we don't have what it takes that other people have. No, sometimes all you need is to look into yourself, evaluate yourself. You've got all it takes to make what you want to make or to be what you have to be. That is a very important lesson. Let us stop seeking for things we don't have. Let us search and find out the beautiful things that we have, especially wisdom that God had already given us, which Lapin was looking for anyway. So kids, on this note, I want to say thank you for reading with John. I like your presence here today. You made my day, where you made my day, where. All right, let me stop singing, and I'll see you next time on RWJ Storytime. Bye.